Hello everyone, my name is Shubhajit and you are watching WebDev Shubhajit. So before starting, I would like to tell you that this is the first video where I'm actually having the webcam on and you can also see me while explaining the things, so it will be more interactive. So with that, let's get started. This video is actually the continuation of the previous video of the explanation in which you will be implementing the Promise.all on your own. Right? So in the previous video, you have implemented that, and this custom promise.all, this code is present here. I will go through it one more time because today in this video, I will be explaining about the promise.all settled, the promise.race, and promise.any, how to implement them on your own by making some few changes in the promise.all custom method only. So that will be like some 2 or 3 lines of changes and then we should be able to achieve that. So let's get started. So first of all, I want to tell you about what I have actually implemented here. Basically, we are returning a promise, and inside the promise we are having a promise array which we are passing from this promise.all custom, okay, which we have defined. That is the replacement of the promise.all which we have in JavaScript arrays, JavaScript promises. So we want that this promise array, whatever promises are present inside that. So in this case, P1, P2, P3, P4, they should execute parallelly and they should return all the values after resolving. And it should actually take the, so all the four of them uh, should take the maximum amount of time which is taken in resolving any of the promises. What do I mean by that? So let's say P1 takes 1 second to resolve, P2 takes 2 seconds, P3 takes 3 seconds, and P4 takes 4 seconds. So we want that for resolving all of them, they should happen at 4 seconds only because P4 is the maximum time which it is resolving, and in parallelly other will be resolved. But when they will be returned, they will be returned after 4 seconds once all of them are resolved. So that is the scenario which we are looking for. Now all the other promise.all settled, promise.race, promise.any works on this principle. Okay. So what we are doing, we are actually running a for each loop over the promise array which is passed, and then we will be waiting for the promises to get resolved, and these will be happening parallelly. And we will be storing the response after resolving each of the promises inside the index, and this index order will be the same as they are coming. That is P1 for the first index, P2 for the second, P3 for the third, and P4 for the fourth index. Okay. Now if so, as I have explained the promise.all, now I will go to promise.all settled. What does promise.all settled say? In case of promise.all settled, it says that settled means either resolved or rejected. Okay, I don't care about them. In promise.all, I care that all of them should be resolved. If any of them shows error, then the response will be rejected. It will not be resolved with the promises. It will be rejected. But here, let's first see that what the actual promise dot, the native promise dot all settled returns. So promise dot all settled. Okay. Now let's save this and now let's run this node promise implementation and then inside that promise.js. Promise.js. Okay. So this program.ends is coming first because they will be running asynchronously and console logged will be happening at first only, and after that this promises get resolved and then the console log data of the return value of promises will be shown. So that's why. Okay, so we have got our output of promise.all settled. I will show you what it is. So fulfilled. Okay, P1, P2, P3, P4. I feel that none of these promises are rejected. Let me reject it, P4. So now you will see when I run that the last one will be rejected. Okay. Yeah, I want to show you the structure of that. So we have an array which we are returning, and inside that, if it is fulfilled, or it is resolved, then it comes as status fulfilled and value as the resolved value. If it is rejected, it is coming as status rejected with a reason of the rejected value. Okay, we have to implement that. Okay, cool. But here do you see that if the promise have rejected, it will actually reject the whole promise? No, it will not. It will actually give us the status rejected with the value. It will not reject the whole promise. Okay, so that is the change which we have to make. So what I will do, promise dot all custom is equals to all custom. I will actually change it to all settled custom. Okay, and I will also change this all settled custom. Okay, now this is fine. Now I am calling this all settled custom one. Okay, saving it now. Inside this, whenever we are looping over the promise array, and whenever we see that okay, the response has been resolved, what I will do, I will not directly add the data to the response index. I will actually see this structure. So this structure is added for each of the response index. So I will actually add this. So if it has been resolved, then status resolved and data value is data. I hope you understand that. So whatever the resolved value, it will come here. Okay, this is done. Count plus one, count. If the count reaches the promise array length, it means all of them has been resolved. Then I will resolve it with response. Okay, then here as we are rejecting it, we should not be rejecting it. Here also the response index should be yeah, take the structure from here because they have rejected, so it should be something like this, and the error should be like this. Okay, so for what error it has rejected, it will be shown here. So status rejected, reason is error. Okay, okay, this is also done. Now here also we have to check. Okay, here also we need to see that if the count is double equal promise dot length, then reject the response. This response is the response array which is containing all the resolved and rejected promises from the promise array. I hope you understand that. Can you see a repetition of code here? This part. So this part is actually uh, getting repeated again and again. Okay. So as this part is getting repeated again and again, and one mistake I have done, I should not be rejecting it with this response. I should be resolving it with this response, because the all settled will give us the response array, okay, which contains these type of objects having status fulfilled or status rejected with the reason or the value. Okay, so every time the all settled will be sending us a resolved array only, containing the resolved value of promises or rejected value of promises, but the whole array will be resolved only. Okay, so here also it's resolved, here also, so you can see there is a repetition here, this part of code, right? And if you know about the try catch block, you should also have heard about the finally thing. Okay, so what does finally do? What does finally do? Okay, I think I have made some error. Okay, so what does finally do? I feel I have to actually do it like this way. Yeah. So inside finally, we are doing this count plus one, and if count is double equals to promise dot length, then we are done. Okay. And yeah, and just remove this also. Okay, this is done. So either it is resolved, either it is rejected, I will be adding them to response index, and I will be in the finally part every time I will be increasing. So this finally will run despite the point this promise resolved or rejected, that is inside then or catch, it the finally thing will run every time. Okay, that you have to understand. Okay, so promise dot then catch and then finally. Okay, this one is done. Yeah, I feel I have mentioned try catch block previously while explaining finally. It is not. It is then and then catch and then finally. Try catch block is a different thing in JavaScript, which we can explain in some other video, which is for error handling. But yeah, we can have that type of structure here in promises also. That is then catch and finally. Okay. Okay. So this part is done. So I think you are able to see that what we have done here, and we can actually run this and see that if we are getting the same response as this one or not. Okay, so let me run that. Okay, can you see that currently we are running this all settled custom? Okay, and we are getting p1, p2, p3 as resolved and p4 as rejected, so we are getting the same answer. So I hope you have understood the promise.all settled. Before moving forward to the promise.race, I want to explain you about one more thing. That is a little thing which is not related to this all settled, but this is about, let's say, someone just directly, okay, someone just directly says this to be p4. Okay, neither promise.resolve, neither promise.reject, just a direct value p4. In this case, it is actually similar to promise.resolve with a value of p4. Okay, now we have to handle this case also, because the user who is actually giving us the array of promises, he doesn't know that what value I should provide. Either it is what do you say, either it is a promise.resolve or promise.reject, he doesn't matter, he can also just pass directly p4, but it's our responsibility to make it like this. So inside the function, and I also want you to change the same thing inside all, promise.all also. So here we are looping over this promise array, and inside that, let me take this as some value for now, and here let me have this promise as value. Okay, and I will check that, what I will check, that if this value is instance of a promise. Okay, if the value instance of promise, if this is not the case, if this is not the case, that is the value what we are getting inside the for each loop, it's not an instance of promise. What will be the cases here? This is the case where it's only p4, it's not an instance of promise, it's a normal string. So in that case, what we should do, we should actually read like give the value after resolving to the promise variable, promise dot resolve of the value. So I hope you have understood this, that we are taking the value inside promise, and we are going inside this if condition whenever our value whatever we have passed, which I have showed you in this condition, which is just a string. In that case, we will actually store inside promise, what we will store, the promise dot resolve value of the this value passed. Okay, so now whatever promise here we have is definitely a promise, either resolved or rejected, we don't know, but it will definitely an instance of promise now. Okay, so this is the change which you have to make, and I will show you that after, yeah, after making the change, I will run you through this. Yeah, so you see that status fulfilled with the value of p4, because we have now changed it to a string and it will be resolved here. Okay, promise.resolve. I hope you have understood this. Now let's move on to the promise.race part. So what is promise.race? Promise.race says that I have some 4 promises in an array, and I am passing it to the promise.race function. I want that the promise.race should give me the first settled promise, either resolved or rejected. I don't care. It should give me the first settled promise, that is either resolved or rejected. So let's say there are 4 promises, p1, p2, p3, p4, and as you see here, each of them is taking 1 second, the second one is taking 2 seconds, the third one is taking 3 seconds to get resolved, but the fourth one is getting resolved in no time. Okay, so here in this case, what will be returned if I actually call the race function? If your uh, expectations are right, then okay, let me save it. Then I hope I got my answer as p4. So can you see that p4, and it is resolved right away. Okay, we can do one more thing. Let's reject it. Okay, so I rejected it now, and it is also the first one to get rejected. Okay, so can you see promise.race, promise.race. Okay, so rejected with the reason p4. Can you see that at the moment the promise rejected with a reason p4. Okay, it triggered an exception. I hope you understood that. Okay, now we have to implement this. How we will we implement this? Change it to uh, race custom, and also make the changes here and here. Okay, and uh, promise.race, instead of that we will be using some race custom, which is this function, and inside this, now let's start making the changes. So as we know that we will be looping over the for each we will looping over the promise array, we will make the changes like this. So whenever it is not a promise, we will change it to a promise with a promise.resolve, and then we will go with promise.then. If it gets resolved with a data, then I will not do this kind of stuff. I will actually right away resolve it with this data. I hope you understood that, because it will not wait for others to get resolved. It will just return the first resolved value or the first rejected value. Here also, I will not wait for others. I will just reject it with the error. So whoever happens first among all the elements of the promise, or among all the promises inside the promise array, either it is resolved or either it is rejected. Okay, I don't care. The first value, settled value of the promise among the promise array p1, p2, p3, p4, that should be returned. I don't need the finally block also now. So let me comment it out for now. If we need it later, then I will add it. Okay. So for now, I think our task is done. I will also comment these things because response and count is not necessary now. Yeah, that should be it. Let's run this up. Race custom we are using. P1, P2, P3, P4. We are rejecting the promise P4. Okay. Can you see? The promise rejected with the reason P4. But if I resolve it, then I'm getting a P4 value. Even if I don't resolve it directly, what do? I just have this value P4. Then also it should be resolved with the value of P4. I will also show you removing that, and we just have P1, P2 and P3, not a P4. And these P1, P2, P3 are all timed 1, 2, 3. You should be able to guess that which one gets resolved. This 1000 milliseconds is the least time that this P1 gets resolved after 1 second. Can you see? P1 comes after some time, that is a second. Okay, okay, and this should be fine. So this is the implementation of promise.race. Now the last one which we have remaining is promise.any, which is very much similar to promise.race, but in case of promise.any, it is actually, we will be returning the first resolved promise. Okay, we will be returning the first resolved promise. Yeah, you got me right. If any of the promises, let's say there are four promises. Okay, let's say there are four promises, and let me add this one also, the P4 one also. Let's say there are four promises, and among these four, let's say third one only gets resolved and the other all gets rejected. In that case, P3 will be returned. Doesn't matter how much time it will take, but it will be returned. Okay, I hope you get that. It will be returning the first resolved promise. And a question might come in your mind, okay, Shubhajit, what will happen if none of the promises gets resolved? All of them will get rejected. In that case, it will actually reject that promise, or it will throw an exception kind of stuff. So in that case, it is it will be throwing an exception. But in other cases where at least one of the promises gets resolved, that will be shown. Let's say if all the promises are getting resolved, then the promise which is taking the least amount of time to get resolved will be returned. I hope you get that. How can we achieve that? How can we achieve that? Okay, so here one thing I am able to understand, that I will not be resolving them right. Okay, yeah, I will be resolving them right away, whichever promise is getting resolved, but I will not be rejecting the promise right away if it is not if it is rejected, because we have to wait till the last promise gets executed, because it might happen that P1, P2, P3, in the order they are executing, let's say taking 1 to 3 seconds, and they are getting rejected. But it might happen that the P4, which is taking, let's say, 7 seconds to resolve, it is getting resolved. So in that case, Promise.any will be returning P4 only, which is taking the 7 seconds. Okay, I hope you are able to understand that. And not 7, but for now, let me take this as uh, 4, and I will show you what I'm telling actually. So make this P4. Okay, so this is done. And yeah, and I will be rejecting all of them, P1, P2, P3. So in that case, I will be able to explain you that scenario which I'm telling. So the last one is getting resolved and the others are getting rejected. And the last one is only taking the maximum amount of time. Okay. Okay. Now let me show you that what is any first. Save it. This is the native implementation of any. Program ends. So this console log runs first, and we get P4 because the P4 is the first resolved promise here. Okay. Okay. Now what? Now we have to implement this on our own. So this should be any custom, and this should be any custom, this should be any custom, and this should be any custom. Okay. Okay, so promise array for each, this should be there. The logic inside this is fine. Promise dot then. So whenever something gets resolved, I will be resolving it. This is fine. But whenever something gets rejected, I should not be rejecting them right away. Let's have an error response, rename symbol and error response. Okay, and let's also have a count. Now, now, yeah, move everything which is inside finally and remove the finally. Go inside this. Count plus is equals to 1. And if count double is equals to promise array, then what should I do? I will reject it with error response. Yeah, because whenever this thing happens, it means that all of the promises have rejected. Okay, none of the promises have been resolved. So in that case, we will be rejecting it. Else, if any of the promises gets resolved, we will be resolving it with the data. And in this case, we are actually waiting to reject till the time the count is double is equals to promise dot length. That is, all the promises have been rejected. then only this count plus 1 plus equals to 1 will happen every time, and the count will reach the promise array length. It means that each of the promises have rejected, and that's why we are here, and we will be rejecting it with the error response. I'm missing something actually. We should not reject it right away. We should be having error response index is equals to the error. Okay, yeah. So I think the work is done mostly. This part is done. Any custom, this is done. And yeah, let us see that what the output looks like. Waiting, we are waiting, we are waiting. P4. Can you see that it gets resolved with a value of P4, which is the last resolve promise. And let's say if the P3 is resolved before P4, then P3 should be returned. Let me show you that. So after 3 seconds, now P3. So the fastest resolved value it will be showing. Now let me show you the last edge case or the edge condition for which we have used the error response, and that is when we are using when we are rejecting all the promises, then what will happen? Can you see? Promise rejected with the reason. So here is an object error because inside the error response, inside the error response, we are rejecting it with the error response. Okay, so this error response is an array, so that's why it's showing it like that. But I hope you have understood that what I am trying to say is that the promise rejected with the reason, and that reason is due to this error response, and this is only running when all the promises have rejected. So our any functionality is also working fine, and yeah, that's all about this video. And I have covered all the cases. I have actually made some small tweaks inside the Promise.all functionality, and we are able to achieve the Promise.all settle, Promise.race, and Promise.any. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please do share it with other people, your friends, family, so they will also able to learn more about JavaScript. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Bye bye.